Cool. All right. So if you're trying to find where you can get that copy of Excel, you want to go to Passport and then go to the webmail. Or if you have webmail bookmark, that works too. And then what you'll want to do is up at the top, make sure they haven't changed anything. There is an option to get to, there it is, more apps, I believe. They change it every so often and they don't make it easy to get to this because they'd rather you use the online version because they track all your activity and your data that way. The downloaded version makes it harder to do that. So once you get here, that button up there, install apps. If you want the downloaded version of this software, that's what you have to do. And again, the online version won't work. If you don't have room to download this or you don't have time, go to Sheets instead. It'll look a little bit different, but it has the functionality you need. If you want the downloaded version, you just come up here. It does take up, you can't install them separately, so you have to install the entire Microsoft Office suite, which does take up some space. And it's a fairly large download, so make sure you have good Wi-Fi when you're doing this. But then it should allow you to do that. It might make you log in again with your authenticator. But then you should have access to all the Microsoft, so PowerPoint, Excel, Word, etc. Any of those other things that you need, right? So you can come over here and activate it that way. Okay.
Mine comes up with you currently not with signed Office license that includes the desktop app, contact your app.
Okay, but and are you logged into? You were logged into Passport, and okay.
Working fine.
Is anybody else seeing that same error where it says you don't have access? You still might be able to download it and install it, and you might have to log in once you get there. But that's more on the technology side anyway. So what we're going to do for starters, as far as actually doing this lab, so when you come to the assignments, there's actually 3 files. There's only one packet here that has, this is just the procedure, because most of what you're going to turn in is in the report, but it's going to mostly be digital. So you don't actually need a print copy of the report sheet for this one. You can answer the questions in the spreadsheets or on a Word document and submit everything online that way. But before we do that, part 1 is basically sort of an overview to what Excel is and why it's useful. So one of the most common places that people see Excel or spreadsheet programs in general is as a way to make charts, which as science people, we generally speaking are going to make a lot of charts and graphs and things like that. The other thing that Excel does really, really well is repetitive calculations. And that also turns out to be really, really critical for people in the sciences because it's really easy to generate a ton of data when you're doing science these days. You can very easily, in the span of 5 minutes, get 10,000 data points, depending on what field you're in and what you're researching. The thing is, those data points aren't necessarily always going to be directly measured the way you want them to. In chemistry in particular, we can't measure anything directly because we're dealing with these atoms that are so small that we can't see them directly. They're actually so small that you can't bounce light off of them in the visible spectrum because the wavelength is just too large. So with that in mind, what we need to do instead is we kind of find other ways to measure things. And that means that our data almost always needs to be processed. We have to do some calculations with the things we measure directly in order to turn it into something useful. So this is where spreadsheets really thrive is basic. It's really a very simple way of coding things, which shouldn't sound scary because it's basically just a giant calculator that if you use it right, will do the same calculation as many times as you want it to, but only writing the formula once. So rather than having to type in every single, let's say that there's some data set where we can measure distance in centimeters. And we want it for another calculation, we're going to want it in meters. If it measures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down to 972 data points, and all of those are in centimeters, we know the calculation going from centimeters to meters is really easy, right? Just divide by 100. We don't want to, even though that's really simple, we don't want to have to do that 972 times. So this is where we're going to use spreadsheets to do the calculation. So this first part is going to be how do we write these formulas? And then how do we get it to work for the entire set of data all at once instead of typing it in by hand every time? So for starters, open up a blank Excel sheet. Or sorry, spreadsheet. When you first open it up, you get something that looks like this, right? I'm using the downloaded version of Excel. If you're doing it in Sheets, it'll look substantially the same. The only thing that's really different is the formatting at the top is different. The way we get to some of the options looks a little bit different. So for this assignment, some of the terminology we'll use is each of these boxes has a set of coordinates that go with it. That you can't really see over here because the very edge of the screen is black there, but every single one of these boxes has its own set of coordinates. It's going to be a letter and a number. The letter tells you what column it's in, and the number tells you what row it's in. So basically, this is just a giant grid where we can specifically say, look at square A1. Square A1, you go to column A, row 1. So it's right here. Easy enough so far, right? Has anybody done any calculations with Excel and spreadsheets in the past? A couple times here and there. Some people not. So blow this up so we can see it a little bit better. There we go. So when we're doing this, the simplest way to do Excel is just to use it to keep track of your data. Like I mentioned, inventory or anything else. We can just type in our numbers by hand. So we're going to start by doing that. What we're going to do for this first part is we're going to make up a fictional class of 5 people and make up some grades for them. And we're going to practice doing some calculations with those grades. So make up 5 names, type in 5 names under the name column. If you just start typing, then your spreadsheet's just going to show you text. So I just typed in the word name there. And then I'm just going to make up some names of some students. And then we're going to make up some assignments to go with it. So everybody knows who Mick and Keith are, right? If you don't, you have more homework. Everybody watch Raiders of the Lost Ark over the weekend, right? We're all current on that? Okay, good. If you don't know who Mick and Keith and Ronnie and Charlie are, then your next homework is going to be to listen to some Rolling Stones. We're just going to make up some scores for their assignments. So for their assignments, again, this is all attached as a PDF to the assignment. If you want your own copy of what you're trying to do, just open that up in a different tab. And we're going to make up scores for 3 quizzes, 3 homeworks, and a test. So start by labeling 3 columns. Quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, homework 1, homework 2, homework 3. And then we have an exam category. And just when you have your 5 names in there, I could mention this here. Probably don't use the names of other people in this room just because it gets awkward when you have to assign grades to them. I feel pretty confident that Mick and Keith are not watching my YouTube recordings, so I can make up grades without offending them. Mick and Keith, if you are watching, yeah, send some tickets my way. All right. So numbers don't matter. Just make up some scores for your people. My kids told me that's not a meme anymore.
Oh, it's not.
I hear it. Yeah. So when you go to, so for now, because it'll take a while to get it downloaded and installed. So for now, I would just open up a Google Sheets page. Do you know how to do that? Do you have a Gmail account? All right. So if you don't know if you have access to that, then let's get started with this downloading process. So go back to your portal. So the way that I get there is, let me bring this over so you can see it. So from your webmail, from portal, or the way that you get your LTCC email is going to be where you want to start. Yeah, there you go. Go to webmail, perfect. And then see those dots up at the top? Mm-hmm. Click there, and then go down to more apps. And then there'll be a button on the top right that says install apps. Okay. And that should walk you through the install process.
That'll take me right to the place of files.
Yeah, so actually you can do the online version there, but the online version doesn't do graphs the way you need it to. So we want the downloaded version, which you just go right. Yep.
Oh, okay.
And then that should have your student ID tied to it because you're logged in, and that might work. Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. So the other thing we need to do, I realized I didn't tell you what to do for points possible for each of these. So we're going to add another row here. I like to put spaces between things so I don't forget that that's not a student. So I'll add a blank space. The same way starting in B2 instead of A1, starting in A1, totally fine. Just because I grew up on using binder paper, you always leave margin and you always leave the top empty on a piece of binder paper, right? So I feel more comfortable starting in B2, want to start in A1, no difference. It's all just the formatting and what makes sense to you so you can keep track of what's going on. And then for points possible, just because my mind thinks in base 10, every assignment is worth 10 points other than the exam, which is 100. If you want to do different numbers, that's totally fine for this assignment. In fact, it'll make yours a little more interesting. So first lesson here, if Excel supports copy and pasting into multiple cells at once. So rather than type 10 a whole bunch of times, you type 10 once, and then copy it. If you don't know the keyboard shortcut for copy, it's not a bad one to know. Control C is copy. When you do that, you get these things back in the dark ages when we first had word processing, when I was in 3rd grade or so. We called those marching ants. The marching ants was basically just showing what the selection was, what you copied. Then I'm just going to select all the things that are going to have a total of 10 points possible by either clicking and dragging. So I can just click here, drag to select them all. You can also, if you hold Shift in the arrow keys, is a way to use the keyboard to select all those. And then just paste, Control V. They're all 10. That's a good start, right? We just saved ourselves some time. Not enough time to be worth doing this in a spreadsheet yet. All right. So if I'm going too slow for you, you can also feel free to open this up and you can work ahead. And when you get hung up on something, then just let me know. We can go through it. If we're going to do some calculations for this, we're going to label the next couple columns. We're going to do their total quiz points and their quiz percentage. All right, if we wanted to know their total quiz points, that would be easy enough to do by hand, right? We just go to the same, okay, so for Nick, quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, we add up those points. It's 27. Easy enough to do by hand for one student. If we want to do this for 5 students, it's still probably easier to do it by hand. If we're doing this for 50 students, I definitely don't want to do it by hand. So we're using 5 students for now. That's about where I'd say the cutoff is, at least my personal cutoff. If I have to do the same calculation more than 4 times in a row, I'll just do it. I'll open up an Excel sheet and just do it there. Right, so for starters, the way that we start by when we want Excel to do math for us is we start by, instead of just typing in words or numbers, we start with an equal sign. And what that does in a spreadsheet program is it's just the signal to the computer that you're going to have either have it call a specific program or do some math or something with it. Right, so an equal sign just tells you it's a formula, not just data, not just letters. So if we just wanted to use this as a calculator, we can hit equals and then we could just type 9 plus 10 plus 8. And instead of just saying 9 plus 10 plus 8, it actually does math. Simple enough to start. Not super helpful yet, right? Because why are we using this over a calculator? The other thing that it does is instead of typing in the numbers, we can actually just type in the cell. So instead of saying 9, I can type in C3. Or even just click. 9 or C3 plus D3 plus E3. And I hit enter, I still get 27. Still doesn't seem all that useful yet, right? Because I still had to type all that in. The advantage of typing it in with the formula like this is that now when I copy and paste a formula, any cells that you reference in that formula get shifted into the other cells as well. So C3 plus D3 plus E3, if I copy that formula, so there's my marching ants. I'm going to copy and paste it right here. When I hit paste, it was C3, D3, and E3. When I copied it down, in row 4, it's C4, D4, and E4. So by copying and pasting it, it doesn't just copy exactly what I typed. If it's a cell that I copied, it shifts that cell's location. So I can basically say, okay, for this column, you're going to take these 3, and every time I copy and paste it, it shifts the row down for me. Now all of a sudden that's starting to look more useful, right? Because I had to type it in once, then I copy and pasted it, and I got it to do 5 addition problems for me. Not only that, the other advantage here is that if I needed to go back and change any of these scores, so let's say that Brian Jones came to me and said, I really feel like I earned a 4 on this problem. And he talked his way into getting 2 extra points. If I change it here, that automatically updates any of the cells that depend on it. So not only does it make it so I only have to write it once and copy and paste it, it makes it so if I change anything over here, those changes are automatically taken into account down the line. And then let's say I just changed it back. See, watch what happens. And that will go down the line. You can wind up with calculations that are like 3 levels deep, 4 levels deep of using those 3 cells, and then this cell get factored into this. It'll take all of the cells that are affected and update all of them automatically when you do this. So super helpful for these repetitive calculations. The other tip you can do is, let's say that there's 12 quizzes instead of 3. I obviously don't want to hit equals and click each of them 12 times in a row. Excel also supports more complicated functions. All right, spreadsheet programs, modern spreadsheets. So I can just hit equals, and instead of just doing the addition, I can type the word sum, which means add up, right? If I want to add a bunch of things at the same time, you hit equals sum, and then you open parentheses. And then you can click and drag to select what you actually want in there. Yeah. And then close parentheses and hit enter. It's the same effect as adding them all up separately. Right? So if you have a larger data set and you want to add up all the numbers, use a sum function instead of typing in the addition by hand. Basically, anything that you can do on a graphing calculator, you can do in Excel better. With the exception of some of the TI-89s and things like that will actually do calculus for you. Excel doesn't do calculus unless you make it jump through some hoops first. Which when you take OChem, I'll teach you how to do. If you take OChem, I'll teach you how to get around ever having to use differential equations again. All right. How's everybody's sheet looking? We're okay to this point? I'm going to demonstrate how to do a percentage, and then I'm going to let you all write the formulas for the homework points and percentages. So who knows the overall formula for a percent? If I'm trying to find a percentage of something, what do I do?
Divide it by the max and then multiply by 100.
Divide it by the max, multiply by 100. Divide what by the max?
Getting the first.
whatever you have, whatever you're measuring the percentage of. In general, our formula for a percentage is part over the total times 100, which is on your conversion sheet too. So in this case, if we're talking about a grade and we're trying to do a percent, what is your part that we're trying to measure? Yeah, so if we were talking about the percentage on quiz 1, we would take 9 divided by the 10 times 100, so we get 90%, right? If we're trying to get the total score for all of the quizzes together, take their total quiz points divided by total points possible in that category times 100. So equals, to tell it we're doing math, quiz points for Mick divided by total points possible in that category. Times 100. Because percentages are always times 100. Does that look good? So if you're not familiar, an asterisk is the symbol that we use for multiplication on a keyboard. Backslash is your division sign. That looks good. 27 out of 30, that's 90%. So it looks like my calculation's working. So if we want to do that for the rest of them, what do we do with that now that we have that formula? What did we do with this one once we wrote the formula once? Copy and pasted, right? The other shortcut that you can use to copy and paste is if you hover the mouse cursor right over the bottom right corner, you get a little symbol that looks like this. It'll look pretty similar in Sheets as well. And when you get that little black plus symbol, that's basically saying you can click and drag and it's going to automatically copy and paste for you. Except I got an error. Why did I get an error? What is the error telling you, do you think?
It modified the position of the points total for each of them as well.
Right, so it's giving this symbol says divide by 0. We don't want to divide by 0, that's not allowed, right? It's dividing by 0 because when, just like before, when we copy and pasted the formula, it's saying quiz points divided by an empty cell now. There's nothing down here. So if we wanted to, we could fix that by just entering 30 5 times in a row. That's not really going to help us long term though. Because again, that's not actually a better option than just using your calculator at that point, right? So basically what we're going to use is there's one shortcut in these spreadsheet programs to say, hey, I'm going to reference a cell, but don't change it when you copy and paste. If you want to reference a cell and you don't want that cell to change, use $signs. So J3 versus J9, which one do we want to hold constant? Which one do we want to stay still? J9. So the way we do that is if you're using a full-size keyboard that has the F keys at the top, when your cursor is on the cell you want to hold constant, you can just hit F4 if you have that key. If you don't have that key, there might be another keyboard shortcut for it, but we're just going to put $J and $9. The $sign is just telling Excel, don't shift that. Hold it constant. So it's saying, no matter what I do when I copy and paste this, don't change this J, don't change this 9. So when I hit enter, first thing that happens is nothing changed because my first cell was already good. But now when I copy and paste, it shifted, the first cell got shifted down each time, but the second one stayed the same for each of these. All right. I'm going to come around and check in with people because I know some people are still a ways back. Everybody, if you're caught up to this point, do the same thing we did with quiz points and quiz percentage for the homework points and the homework percentage. So I had 2 more columns, homework points, homework percentage, and try and do the same thing, get it to work. You did your person. Cool. I'm actually gonna look at it pretty quick. You're in good shape now. You're just gonna kind of, but let's start by this is one of the reasons why I recorded it, right? So some of this then I'll keep working with you. So start by making up your scores for your fictional people. And then I'll come back around and go back over some of that stuff with you, okay? Basically, yeah. So you can make up your own names, your own scores for the assignments. But just make up a couple people, give them scores. Yeah, before we can do that, we want to do homework points, right? Before we can get quiz percentage, we want to do first points. Because so otherwise, when we copy and paste the formula, it shifts that cell down too. So we go back to where it was. So if we don't have those dollar signs, the whole point of having these cells is that when we copy and paste, we want the cells to shift also, right? If we just do that though, when we copy and paste, we get these errors because this is saying it shifted this one down, which we wanted, but then it also shifted the points possible down. So it's trying to divide by an empty square. We don't want that because we can't divide by 0. So the dollar signs basically say don't change it when I copy and paste. All right, so a large chunk of spreadsheet skills are actually just playing with formatting issues, just like being in Microsoft Word or doing things in PowerPoint. If you want to change it so that these, maybe I don't want to show all those decimal points. Maybe I want everything rounded off to the tenths place in these percentages. If you want to set the format for these, if you're in Excel, you just select the ones you want formatted a certain way. Right click or whatever the shortcut is on a Apple. Does Apple have right click now? Or is it command click still? Regardless, however you get a formula or a menu up like this, go down to format cells. And that gives you the opportunity to say specifically what you want it to look like. This is sort of extra. You don't need to be doing this for this assignment, but if I want to say I want it to be a number to go out to the hundredths place, you can do that. You can force it to be in scientific notation if you wanted. Excel supports scientific notation. I'm just going to do it like that so that my cells look nice and clean, so that everything looks the same. You should keep in mind, though, given that we've been talking a lot about sig figs and rounding, this doesn't actually round the cells. This number is still going to be 83.333 out to infinity as far as Excel is concerned. We're just changing what digits it displays. So if we needed to then go do further calculations with this, it's not actually rounding. And if you're in Sheets, it'll look mostly the same. I think you're still going to select it and right click. That when you do that in Sheets online, it'll bring up a menu off to the side, which has a lot of the same options. It just is going to look a little bit different. So in thing I don't like about Sheets in general, Sheets is pretty good these days. It didn't used to be. Where it falls down is it tries to think for you a lot. And it always assumes that you're a business major when you're using Excel and it tries to think for you. It's always going to try and give you a bar chart, or it's always going to assume you're talking about quarterly returns or something like that. So I try to let Excel and Sheets think for me as little as possible because they always get it wrong. Or rather, and this is actually worse than always getting it wrong. It gets it right just often enough that you might start to trust it, and then it gets it wrong. So the safe thing to do is to just try not to do let the spreadsheets do any of the thinking for you. So then if I go to right click here, there's some options. I think you can double click too. But there's ways to get it to only show certain decimal places here as well. Change the format and things like that. All right, so like I said before, it'll look a little bit different, but it's substantially the same. Percentage. All that's going to change from this is you're going to shift everything over by one spot, right? It's still going to be points divided by points possible And we're still gonna want to keep that as a constant, so we're still gonna want $sign and $sign 10 times 100. If we did our $signs properly, then everything should work out. Questions so far? So in Excel, you go to right click and you go down to format cells. And then that brings up this. And so you just pick whatever seems most relevant here. We're never going to be dealing with currency. So I usually just go to number. General just tries to guess for you. And 9 times out of 10, if you let Excel guess for you, it's going to assume it's a date for whatever reason. So just go to number, select how many decimal points you want. So here's an example. If you try to type in, like, I don't know, 8 out of 12, 8 over 12, almost guarantee you it's going to assume that that's a, yep. You just type 8 over 12, it thinks it's a date. Excel always thinks everything is a date. So don't do that. If you change the formatting back, it should put it back to the way it was. All right. So this is all the directions also that go along with the recording. If you are doing this at home. The last piece we're going to do for now is let's make this, find the final grade for this. We're going to assume that this class has categories, just like our class. And the actual distribution is a little bit different. This class is 50% homework, 20% quizzes, 30% exam. We could do that by just picking the overall percentage, by saying, okay, I'm going to make sure my quizzes add up to a total of 20 points. And my homework adds up to a total of 50 points. And my exam adds up to a total of 30 points. But that messes with my whole scheme of make everything out of 10 or 100. So what we do instead is it's a weighted average. This is the way that Canvas actually processes your grades. Your instructor goes in and says, this category is with this much percent. And then it adds up all the pieces. So our final grade, not this color. Our final grade is 50% homework. So in a weighted average, what that means is we're going to take that homework score, that homework percentage, and we're going to multiply by 0.5, 50% as a decimal. So we're going to say 0.5 times the homework percentage. And we had 2 other categories, right? 20% was the quizzes. So 0.2 times your quiz percentage. And what's our last piece? It's the exam, right? The exam is worth 30%. So 0.3 times your exam percentage. All grades that have weights to specific categories are going to work this way. Because then I don't have to make sure that my homework category adds up to the right number of points. I can just have my homework category. No matter how many points are in my homework category, the homework category as a whole is only worth 50% of my total. So if we want to try and plug that in, and actually calculate that, we just have to add up the right squares, right? The right cells. Do we have exam percentage yet?
Yeah.
Yes and no. We don't have a column labeled as exam percentage, but as long as there's only a total of 100 points in my exam category, the score in exam is the exam percentage. If you made your exam worth something that's not 100, then we need to add another category here. So let's say that I decide one of my questions was too hard. And so I'm actually going to make this out of 90 points instead of being out of 100 points. That didn't change anything yet. I'm just going to add another exam percentage category here. We don't need to add up exam points if there's only one exam though, right? You just take exam equals exam score over 90, add your dollar signs. Perfect. So, yeah, we have one areas points with equals. Done shift. So yeah. So whatever we came up with for everybody. Anytime you change something, you didn't mean to change. Like I hit enter, but I didn't mean to do that yet. Anytime you want to undo anything, there's a keyboard shortcut for that. Control Z is your best friend when you're working in stuff like this. Control Z just undoes whatever you did last. So anytime you accidentally delete all your data because you selected it all to add it all up and then you hit delete instead of enter, just hit Control Z. It'll go back to the way it was. You just have to rewrite your formula. All right, so if you want to add up quizzes, you can just click on with C3 for switch last. So column C3, right? And then just hit plus. And then you should select the next one. So you also shift always give me a second, right? And then we want to choice 2, right? So D3 plus, the same thing. And there you go. Yeah. For quizzes that here, right? You have to break with it. Did you delete that last? Just hit enter.
Instead, the other thing you can do is you can, instead of typing that by history, if you select time, you already typed formally, where to the 27. If you want to do the same thing for all four, that little tiny corner where it down, click and drag back down. What that does is that copy that one and it just it down. Yeah. All right, we want to do our final.
Okay. We want to do the final grade. Sometimes it can be helpful for in Excel. So for this class especially, and the way I'm usually going to have you show your work for a spreadsheet like this is I'm going to have you show the work and do the calculations by hand for one data point. And then what you're going to do for the rest of it is take what you did by hand and type it into the spreadsheet in the right formatting so that it does the same calculation for you. So it's sometimes showing your work by writing it out by hand the way we would normally write something out is helpful for then translating it into Excel language. And so if we want the final grade to be 50% homework percentage, 20% quiz percentage, 30% exam percentage, all we're going to do is we're just going to type that in and say, okay, well, 0.5 times homework percentage. Oops, I forgot to start with an equals. Didn't work that time either. What did I do? I tried to click on the cell, but I didn't tell it to do math yet. It's basically Excel and Sheets won't assume you mean multiplication if you leave out an operator. You still have, no matter what, you have to type in that multiplication symbol. Otherwise, it won't make the connection that 0.5 times the cell is supposed to be multiplication. So 0.5 times the homework score plus 0.2 times the quiz score plus 0.3 times your exam percentage. We hit enter, we get a final grade. Is that a reasonable final grade? At least it's not coming back as like 80,000. That's a good clue that you messed up a calculation when you get a percentage that's not reasonable. But just in general, looking at the scores, you have 94, 73, and 90. Our final grade's probably somewhere in that range, right? Which is what we see. We look at the formula. Was there anything in here that we needed to keep constant? So before we hit copy and paste on our formula, it's always a good idea to think to ourselves, am I supposed to keep something constant? In this case, we want all of these to shift. So when we hit enter, after we checked our formula, copy and paste it down. That all looks pretty good, pretty reasonable. All right. Questions on the formulas? So when I say we're going to do calculations in a spreadsheet, this is what I mean. And like I said, anything that your TI-83 can do, the spreadsheet can do. It'll even do stats. Most of you, if you have a TI-83, you bought it because you had to learn how to do stats on it, right? Two-tailed t-tests and things like that. You can actually do two-tailed t-tests in Excel. It'll do all the same statistical testing that you would normally need. And it's personally, you're working from a computer instead of, trying to find the right keys and type everything in on a TI-83. So I find it highly useful that way. All right. Last thing. That it has you calculate on here is it says, what if we want to calculate the average of all these categories from the students? Well, normally, if you want to find the average, how do you find a regular average, an unweighted average? If I want to know the average score of quiz one, how would I do it? Add them all up. And then what? Divide by however many numbers there are, right? We can do that. We could do equals sum, add these up, and then take that number and divide by 5. But then what if I add another student? Then I'd have to go back and change it by hand. We don't like that. And luckily for us, we can just use the fact that Excel already has and Sheets already have this programmed in there. Equals average. Average is a mathematical operation. So we just type equals average and then open parentheses, just like we did with equals sum. When we open parentheses, then we can just select the things we want to average. Close parentheses, hit enter. Average score on quiz 1 was an 8 for my students. And just like before, I can copy and paste that, except now I'm going to copy and paste it sideways instead of up and down. Right, so once you have your average in there, you got your formula, copy it, paste it, select all the cells that you want it to go in. Paste. All right, how we doing? Calculations have a little finicky bits to it. Using those dollar signs in particular takes some practice. But other than that, it's going to be a really useful tool. And there are a couple labs in particular in this class where we're going to take a bunch of data and then do the same math to them. And it's for 7 data points. And then we're going to want to take our results and make a graph with it. So if we want to make a graph, that's the last piece. And that's most of what this other packet, this procedure is going to be. How do you make a graph? And it has you do it in a couple different ways. It's, again, a little bit, the tool or the menus look a little bit different now than they did when this was written, but it's substantially the same. So what I'll show you real quick, if we wanted to make a chart. This isn't something that you need to do, but I'm just going to use the data that's already in here. You're going to take the data that you're given from this lab to do yours. When you want to insert a chart, you get your cursor away from everything else. If you leave your cursor, if you leave that green box over here and try to insert a chart, it tries to think for you and it'll do like 17 different things on top of each other. We don't want that. So you get your cursor away from everything. And then you go to insert, and then in Excel, it looks like this. But what you're looking for is an XY chart or a scatter chart. And then when you click on it, it gives you some options. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. If you want to see the individual data points, this is a good one to go with. And then you get a big empty box. Super helpful. Except what this is going to do is now what I can do is I'm going to just hit select data. You go up to the top and that ribbon, you hit select data, and it gives you this big scary looking blank dialog box. All this is going to say is this is going to be where we pick our X's and Y's. So you come over here and you go to add, and it gives you another blank scary looking data box or dialog box. Except that at least these make sense. Series X values and series Y values. The whole reason we picked an XY chart or a scatter chart instead of a line graph, because they can look really similar sometimes, is in the sciences, we always want to tell it what the X's are. If you just pick a line graph or a bar graph, it assumes that all of your X values are exactly the same distance apart from each other. If you want to specify what your X's are, what X's and Y's go together, you do a scatter chart. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say where the X values are. So on a Mac in particular, this looks different, but the options are the same. It'll still pull up a big dialog box and you go to add series, and then it'll pull up something that looks like this. And if we want to click and drag to select our X's, we just go to this little button over here. And it looks a little bit different if you're in Sheets or on a Mac. But let's say, again, you're not going to be plotting this one specifically, but let's say I just want to look at how closely their exam score matches their final score. So I'm going to plot exam score as the X-axis and final score as the Y-axis. So for the X values, I hit that button so that I can minimize everything, and then I just click and drag to select all of my X values. And I hit enter. And it fills in the formula part for me if you do that. We do the same for Y. For this one, I'm going to look at final grade because I'm comparing final grade to the exam score. And I hit enter. And I hit OK. And it looks like this. Don't worry about that. You just hit OK. And now I have a chart that has a bunch of data points where I selected the X and the Y that go together for each of them. That's the bulk of what you're going to do in this is going to be, how do I do an XY plot and make it look the way that it's supposed to look? All right, so the rest of this lab is just more practice with that. It says, here's a data set, type it in, then figure out a way to plot it so that it looks right. All right, so I'm going to be done lecturing at this point and turn you all loose to work on this and come around. If you're still working on the calculations part, I'll help you with that as well. But you're just going to be following along with this. Sorry, I take it back. One more thing, because I'm just so brimming full of knowledge to share with you today. I can't help myself. You can do all of this assignment in one spreadsheet. It might be advantageous because then you only have to upload one file at the end. The way you do that is spreadsheets have multiple tabs, basically. They call them sheets because this comes from the old school where you would actually have this in a ledger book. There was actually physical pages that had these grids on them. If you want to add another sheet, you go down to the bottom and there's a little plus sign. On Google Sheets, I think you might have to right click down at the bottom and hit add sheet. But if you do that, that just gives you a whole blank one that's still tied to the same file. So when you hit save, all of your stuff goes together. So you can do all of this in one Excel file and only have one file that you have to keep track of and have to submit. If you submit it as two files, that's totally fine too. But if you wanted to do it all together, you just come down here, and then you can double click on those and change their names. It works just like a tab in an internet browser. You can even reference different sheets within your same formula if you needed to. So if I had 10,000 data points in this, and then I want to add another sheet so that I can clean it up and show my graphs without having all 10,000 data points right there, you can do that. All right. Questions before we sign off?
What was it you were saying about showing our work?
So for this one, I don't think it has you do it. Showing your work in this one is going to be turning it in as an Excel file so that I can see your formulas. Yeah. Maybe in like that. Okay.
Oh, basically, you find it. So I think we want to extend any further, you can write on the itself. So first you want to zoom out. If you want to extend the line, that's in one of the options, dolphin. Very good. There's basically when you're trying to. Oh, yeah. Okay. One of the things I like to look at is I know it's Charlie. Okay.
You know? Like.
I want to use. It'll be a little bit. But for your most of the thing. If you don't just copy it, you can borrow them.
Part you.
Yeah. But the plus, the plus for development work, but now just go put it on the second one. It's already the. Just back. Right? So go back and start that already.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're finding the. Probably like what we should say right now. So if we want to do it, not just type in. So here, put it aside. But you're gonna do there one later, the first one that you're gonna burn. You can either turn it. That's the right, because I can. So you need to clear, because I can put that. Like that. Except that. For a percentage of the parts of the.
Oh, I know, we're grandpa, any customized.
Okay. It's gonna. Carrying versus we get.
Okay, so then there's a checkbox with framework.
So.
I know, right?
Okay, so what do you want to do?
Absolutely.
So that gives you your 20.
Yeah, you know, I.
Yeah. I'm good. So, but now if you copy paste. Because you just take it in point of that, right? Well, you type in point of that here. So you're gonna rewrite that thing for another, because it's better to make it a 27, you're gonna put it on. I agree. Because it's just.
You want us to actually print this out?
No, you don't need to print it out. On I3, because you're one row over from where I was, mine says J3, but your quiz points are in column. Oh, okay.
And you're also. Okay. So you can very steady. That pump about. Instead of. It's equal or calculate. Right. Except if you want to place where I'm from. Because right now you're in control. So you see where you just type in from. Move it further over there. Yeah, it'll be 27. Okay, where's the now instead of number. And it's keep on it. Wait, you gave that number. Okay. There's no other money.
Or I'm like,
That works.
wait, try mine from starting with one. Okay, turn three is how to think about it. We're getting equal. Hey. What do you have? What's up? And what's this? Ah. Part of what? Oh, so we're on nice work. But that's the day. Right, but I have to. You need to find. I don't know, that's not. So we can. I like, I think. Starving. Starving. You need to make out breakfast. I got. No, sorry. He's okay.
So that doesn't matter as much for this one now, but now you know that your step is. For, and you're doing the same thing as the other. You're next.
Oh, there is none? Yeah, I can't find one on Google.
Yeah.
See if it does.
No, that would be. Yeah, so you have any way to do fair mind? No, why? So for. So. Click on. Volume is the y-axis.
So I send it over another.
Minus eight. So what it's saying is, okay, you're supposed to plug in your value 10.5 in for X, sorry, for Y, because your volume is Y, right? So you're gonna plug in 10.5 for the Y, and you're gonna solve for where X is. Right, so if your equation for your trend line is, it doesn't show the Y equals, but it's Y equals 0.108 X plus negative 8.09 or whatever it is, right? Your Y variable is volume.
Yeah.
So volume equals 0.108 and your X value is temperature, right? So if you want to find the temperature where the volume is 10.5, you're going to plug in 10.5. And you're just gonna solve for T.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. They got dibs. I'll be back.
All right, how we doing? Sorry.
Um. Then I was
So you're using the online versions. The online versions gonna have machines making some of these graphs. Might be able to make it work. But you might find yourself running your head up against the wall, but I'll try to let you know. If you've gotten one of those, it's working for now. You're able to get that, right? So in general, the design elements now are over, you put over on chart. Oh, you already are. Well, see that little down here right there, click on it. Get class into it. That makes it see if they can really talk a little better. You want to have a chart element, it's usually gonna be in here somewhere. Right.
It's that. It's 0.108%. Right? Yeah. Right. At short bonus for that's. What's we do? So. Like 172.1. Yeah, it's shaded to the front. Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it's different because.
So normally, when we're working on spreadsheets like this, if you're gonna submit a spreadsheet or a chart with your assignment, everybody has to do their own. Even if you're working together, I want each of you to work on your own spreadsheet so that you all get the practice. I realize I didn't give you the notification needed for everybody to have a device here today. So for today, I'll relax that and you can submit the same file for both people in your group. Normally, that's not okay. That's a form of plagiarism if one person does the spreadsheet and two people turn it in. Even if you were working together. So normally I would have you both working on that. I just want, for this one, it's okay to submit the same file. In the future, each of you submit your own file. Cool? Tom, and then I'm coming back over here.
So, right now I'm at the solving for the 10.5 and there isn't a function like this on Google Sheets.
There
Or
is kind of.
Ooh, oops, I'd love to.
Okay. So if you're trying to come up with a trend line, the way you do that in Sheets, you've got the trend line, double click on the trend line. Now, if you come over here and scroll down, one of the options is it says label for the trend line, it says custom, change that to use equation.
Mhm.
Now that up there, that's the equation of the line.
Okay, so now we just use this.
And that's what I was showing up there, where you're just gonna say, okay, this is my equation for my line. If I want to know what the temperature is, where the volume is 10.5, you plug in 10.5 for your Y, solve for X.
Perfect. Okay, and then we do that just in one of these.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Or you can even do it on paper and then just write your answer there. I solved for,
Sweet. Thank you so much.
no problem. And then. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm not saying.
So the weird thing about how Sheets works with these graphs is all of your X's be in the same column.
Oh, sorry.
So you would take these and put it in the same column. Your other, you can move it over. To this.
Wait to wait, this is where.
You might get a center. Other ones have to be over a column. So take those ones, and you can leave it blank. In column B, yeah, that's what I was talking about here. You can leave that there, that's fine.
Okay, but it's.
Yeah. But you
No, I
know,
do.
got your stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it should work, you should double click on those data points where you went to data in the first place and you're getting. So. But.
Which one? You could, you're.
Right. Okay. Do you mind with this?
This is older. If you had some of it. You're going by fives and you're going up to. So you will splatter.
And this, now. Okay. So. Okay.
Yeah, you're.
Um. Just color. So you might have to use something that's not an extra sheet.
Really close far.
Because I don't know. I don't know. See what that does, and then you should be able to copy and paste the data over there, so you don't have to do everything, but it should give you more options than getting on version.
Good part, Coco.
Maybe. That was.
No.
Mike,
So
I don't
what-
think you have one.
See, it's not starting at 0. That's why it doesn't look the same as everybody else's. If you look at the other, right?
But you're just 20 by 10, basically. So just like.
So double click on the axis at the bottom. Of course, there's just pick on the, yeah. Try again. So then if you come over here, usually there's a place,
Huh?
say,
I think that, do you have one of them?
so this, you can sort of set the minimum yourself instead of letting it pick for you. Try typing 0. That looks a little closer, right? A little bit weird that you have that one random, one in the middle. That's the one that corresponds to. We shouldn't have any data points down that far because your lowest data point is 200 and that's well below. Oh, that was not a real data point. That was just the select. They changed the way that looks. You're fine. So now you should be able to double click on those data points and add a trend line. Your trend line is just. Play around with it, see if you can find an option that says add trend line. Come back here and then I'll come back forward for the trend line.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think I'm more like a baby.
I don't know. To. Yeah, so I was going exam to be. Out of. Out of 9 points, out of 100 points, changed my formula a little bit, so. So you're still fine, if you're assigned, if your exam is out of 100 points, you get it to 5. The first, the divided time, because it's always part divided by its total. Right, so, but you don't need to do that, I was just doing that or anything. Okay, so then for your final grade, I'll put the cursor on so you can see the formula, see what I did. You can get closer before I know it's not that you just see. So the trend line is the y equals 20.1078. That's what we do. Our square is basically how straight your data is. Pretty good. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Do it perfectly linear, our square is equal to 1. So that's pretty good. You already have it. Okay. So where's the volume of the texture you want? The quantity on temperature, the volume equals 10.5. You plug in 10.5. Then you just do it would just be a algebra. You just plug in 10.5 equals 0.178 minus 3. You solve that. And your temperature. So you know your volume. And what volume that from 5 to your volume gets back to 5. Those are our screen values. Because you look at. I don't. We don't keep involved from always diversified. Yeah, you know, so, oh, everybody has to always. That's why. What do you think? We should be doing this. Forget it, the mirror. That's the word. That's. All right. There you go. Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah, so you want to do first, you pick it first. So your data range, right, putting in. Yes, sure.
Okay. And now you can take it. So. Down button. And you can just click maybe try it. Or you can pay anybody. Stop. We don't survive. That's what you just selected. You want it to give. It won't until you get it. Good. See that and fastest. Amazing, that. And it really, and it didn't mind us saving when you selected your axis. See that, right? It's basically, it's anything about whether you can do things, anything. You can make it there, a little bit. They very young. Again, you go up and goes to the two settings, trying to play. You gotta try. There you go, you all back. So. You turn it.
Okay.
Okay, so. Version, so. Right. Right, play or command play. Never, already. They do like with their network. So, what's the button? We had one there. What's the list? Services. So when you do that, once you. So that's one of the all of them.
Yeah, so you can have a series issue, but it's only allowed to have a series on the X-band. No, so I'm not, I don't understand.
Okay, right for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Only if it's particular fleets, it's only like. X-axis. The only line. Maybe we get the. So no, that's right. And then this is.
Yeah. Wow.
The feed. It's just saying practice. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. Yeah.
So for the
The other one we have to do, yeah, I think we got this. Yeah, and then it would be similar for this one, it makes it thank you line point of it. It says taste ratings, so if you have two lines, then you got the one of those, like, you want really where they meet. Instead of, okay, so, like, I'm right. Yeah. Method two works better. You get the equation for the line, it's a little bit out front, actual factor. Definitely more accurate.
Hey, Sean.
Actually, give me 1 second, Parker. So, Bianca, when you have the equation, it looks like this, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, Sheets doesn't show the y equals part, but it's, right? And then, yeah.
Yeah.
So y is your volume. Because that's what you put on your y-axis. And x is your temperature. So if you want to know what the temperature is at a certain volume,
Right.
the volume you want is 10.5. So you just plug in 10.5 for y, solve for x. That's all method two is showing.
Okay.
Here, and then I'm coming back to next and then back over here.
Then, awesome.
Okay.
Okay, you have to skip, it's like this. Back on there, trying to do it, and it's literally.
So it's not going to look quite the same. Don't play on the data points. Right, all right. For anybody who's working on part two of the graphs, where you have to put two series on the same graph, it looks a little bit different in Sheets than it does in the instructions. The instructions work just fine, but if you're trying to do it in Sheets, so if I'm trying to do this here, I might be able to see what happens when I do that in the interest of speeding things along. All right, I'm going to do some steps that are just to help speed things up, since so I don't have to put everything in. There we go. All right, so for this one, where we want to put two different things on the same plot, and we had, this is it concentration and absorbance, right? Yeah. So this would be good enough in Excel to just pick your X's for one series, pick your Y's for one series, and then add another series. If we do this in Sheets, what we have to do is you have to put both concentration, all of your X values have to go into the same column. But then if we want to do it as two different series so that we can get two different trend lines, we have to take these last four data points and drag them into a third column. So now I have all of my stuff in three columns. All of my X's go together. All of my Y's are split up based on which series they're in. So now when I go and I insert a data set or insert a chart, go through the normal process. I don't want a column chart. I want an XY scatter. So now when I do this, when I pick X-axis, I select the entire X-axis. And when I go over to series,
I didn't get all the next points. Plug into the X axis.
So does this look familiar?
Got it.
Okay,
Right, I get that one.
okay.
Stick. But X is on the bottom.
How did I get all the X's there in the first place? You can just type them in by hand, which is good enough for now. I just know a couple tricks to speed that process up. So worst case scenario, you enter it by hand. If you copy and paste the whole thing like I did before, and you get it like this, these ones right here have all the data set, all the data points in the same cell. There's a trick where you go up to data and you go split text to columns. And it'll pull those things apart for you. So that I just did that to speed things up. All right. Chart. So add x-axis. Select all your data points. Add series. You come over, you select the whole thing, including the empty ones for your first series. And then you add series again. And you select the whole thing, including the empty ones. And you get something that looks like that. Which is what it's supposed to look like, except we're also going to add trend lines to it. All right, so if you were in Excel, you didn't need to do that step. It doesn't have to be formatted this way. If you're in Sheets, it has to be this way, or you can't get two series with the right X values. And if you're on the online version of Excel, I don't even know if that'll work. Because the online version of Excel is its own special kind of hell.
Did that answer your question too?
I couldn't get it. Sure, thanks.
Are you on Excel or are you?
I have two sheets.
That's fine. So let's look at what yours looks like. Yours looks good.
First one,
So it does, that's the same thing when we come back over here. If you look at some of them are ending, they're all going to right?
right.
So you got A2 to A13 for your X's, you got C2 to C13 there. Now you add series, you want G2. Yeah, okay. Oh, including the empty ones.
Okay, there we go. I mean, obviously, those.
No,
Okay.
hang on one second. Now coming back to the corner, I see you. Yeah. So that's the low tech way, is it close? So estimating, but it's kind of hard to figure out where 10 much higher the direction. Method 2 is actually the better way. Which is basically when you have the equation for the line. You don't have yet, but you can get it. There it is. So now let's look at this kind of spots. See, right. We're just gonna plug in 10.5 to the Y and solve for X. So you just write it. You can just use that and it's basically. Right changes. Okay. And then I'm coming back that way.
So,
Yeah.
the sheets just gave me these labels of these. Just from what I've.
They are incorrect. If you go back, scroll back up. If you change amount of die, because we took the amount of die part, we put it down here, right? So if you change that back to being absorbance, then it's gonna give you the same, so you might want to say like absorbance B or something like that to separate it from absorbance A. But now when you scroll down, it should have updated that.
What about? It's the both, so it should just be a 12-8 space.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's.
No problem.
That's the only way, 1%. What do you get from the state zero records? Everything is minus three. Yeah, negative. So you order, then you're. Same for everybody. Done in one. If you wanted to, you could just start down on the process, or you download everything, and then on the document, all you look, it's never. But it's already started working, and that download you take, it's all off. Hey, how we doing? That one, the relations one, is just. This is where you're actually supposed to get from, like, to get into things, you're going to put in a direction in there. And you're ready to start with this. Yeah. That. That's perfect. You can. You can kind of find out later if you want, but that's better. Is that a hand, Bianca? Okay.
I'm still talking about it. How do you get it?
So
But yeah, this thing from so.
this is where it's helpful to just have a piece of scratch paper or a whiteboard handy. Because you're just gonna take that. And I would just do it by hand for this. It's just one equation. Finding this equation by hand is awful. You never want to find a linear regression line by hand, but once you have it, you can just treat it like any other line. And so just doing it on a piece of paper is fine.
That I did not. Let's see.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, everyone. So, yeah, 40 hours, there's some things that's my one, we don't put it. And so, that's it. I'm really. It made such a number. So that's literally pulled that to Jack, the meeting, and it's an expert, American border data. Half the meeting, half the medium located at 10 and price McDonald. And so. Better find out. Yeah. So we find to be different. Bring it to every house for you. Right. Yeah, we had to add. 1/2.
Sorry.
Right? Okay, so we have to add and delete. Actually, the number of measurements. So, yeah. So, and that's the median, right? Right, so the median.
Right, can you repeat that to double check if you, all the questions. You're cruising. You're in good shape.
Right.
Right. Down outlier. Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't have to calculate standard deviation for 10 data points by hand, you don't reflect how valuable stuff is. Really helpful. Yeah. So. You've got the equation, you got the R squared,
5
so that's good. What do you just?
Another difference. There are. So they would go to the city. But so you. Yeah.
Or X. Go backward.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh, well, like.
so. Spin it backwards, you can see this one.
Oh, that's 2 pages.
Volume is 10.5 goes to temperature, so you just say, okay, well, 10.5 goes to 10, so for here, the line gets. That like 175, that's all that the point is. And then method 2, which is actually for that, we'll see how.
5. And then 4 batches. And 3, 4, 5, 3 for motion. Okay, so yeah, so yeah. And sure.
Sometimes that messes with like formatting stuff,
But you've been doing it. Format. Should you? Do that, that I was talking about up here, basically, in Excel, you just think them like this, select your X, select your Y, select your X, select your Y. Sheets won't do that. For sheets, you have all of your X's in the same column.
So basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna make it look like this. Where that's series 2 concentration, I'm just gonna take it and I'm gonna put it underneath series 1.
Did we have to do this?
Close.
Did you guys do this for all of them? I don't know.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
It's not gonna alter your items.
Alright. So you just went to the dump.
Just first thing, right? What you need to do is you need to take all of the ones that go in series 2, but starting with at 8.0. And then you need to go over one column. So leave that that 8 or 0.8 where it is, leave your X value where it is, and you want to change these points, 0.62 into those bottom four. Drag those over those.
It's awesome.
You can do that in the original screen. Okay, there you go. So now you've got the equation. And now what you want to do is you want to have another series. That's gonna, and you're gonna start at the top and select all the way down. And okay? There you go. No problem. It's just a weird little finicky thing about sheets. It has to be done. Cool. You were I have not done that grade level, but I'm gonna go, I know that there's greater, so I'll take care of that too. Now I got you next. Yeah, that's fine.
There's not big. It's perfect. Yeah. So.
So two lines of equations where they cross, that's where they're gonna have the same y value, right? So we can say this, okay, well, y value is the same for this equation and that equation. We can set the y equals part, we can set it the second half. So we can have negative 3.28x plus 3.2375 equals 0.107x. 0.015. And then you solve rest. Yeah. Simultaneous equation usually just means that things are true at the same time. So if you have two equations, they're set equal to each other. That's a way to get rid of one of the variables and now it's all correct. Right, so
Yes, I'm gonna record, it is recorded. In fact,
yeah.